In this study, I'm going to try to analyze the book of Jonah, and I'm looking at my blogspot, Gilgal's Biblewheel.blogspot.ca /2013 /10 analyzing book of Jonah.html. And I had written this. The first and third chapters of Jonah have some similarities when compared verse by verse, whereas Jonah 2 and 4 are similar. The book of Jonah, being the 10th prophetic book from Isaiah, also the 10th book of the second cycle of the Biblewheel, is related to Noah, the 10th from Adam, and what happened in his days, which is covered from Genesis 5 to 11. When we start reading Jonah 1, I'm going to read it to you. Now the word of the Lord came unto Jonah the son of Amittai. Amittai means my truth, and saying, Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry against it, for their wickedness is come up before me. I'm not going to read it through, I'm just going to compare it with Jonah 3:1. As you notice, the way that it's highlighted, it may be a little confusing, but my point of highlighting each word with a different color is to simply try to point out the similarities. And for example, when you look at now the word of the Lord came unto Jonah, it's repeated in chapter 3:1, and the word of the Lord came unto Jonah. I mean, the Hebrew is the same, whereas in English it might differ a bit. Now over here it says now, over here it says and. But when you look at the Masoretic text, you'll notice it's quite similar. And the only difference is in chapter 1, verse 1, it mentions the son of Amittai, Amittai, whereas chapter 3 says Shenith, meaning the second time. And we jump on to the next verse. Actually, before doing that, in this column, I made this column simply to add some notes or any other links. So we'll look into this. Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry against it, for their wickedness is come up before me. And chapter 3 has the same thing. Arise, go unto Nineveh, that great city, and preach unto it this time. The preaching that I bid thee. But when you look at the Hebrew, once again, crying and preaching is actually the same word. Vakra. And Vakra here as well. And the only difference is their ending. For it says, for their wickedness has come up before me. This is what it says there. And in verse 2 it says the following. And when you look at Jonah as a book, uh, it's related to Genesis 10, for example, where it mentions Nineveh, and it mentions that it is a great city. And chapter 1, verse 3, But Jonah rose up to flee unto Tarshish from the presence of the Lord, and went down to Joppa, and he found a ship going to Tarshish. So he paid the fare thereof, and went down into it to go with them unto Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. And but the second time, so Jonah arose and went unto Nineveh according to the word of the Lord. Now Nineveh was an exceeding great city of 3 days' journey. And it mentions two cities. Sorry, here it says Tarshish, and the second part is Nineveh, where Jonah arose and went. But if you look at the Hebrew, it says Vayakom Jonah. In other words, Jonah rose up, and he fled to Tarshish. Tarshish is not mentioned here. Maybe I shouldn't have highlighted that because it's not in common with verse 3. However, you do find it in uh, Genesis 10. Once again, there's another link with Genesis 10. So you have Tarshish, and the previous city was Nineveh, and also the adjective, or the great city. And in verse 3, you have more things that are different. Jumping on to verse 4, but you do see the similarities. For example, the first few words are similar. Uh, yeah. Then we jump on to verse 4. Uh, but the Lord sent out a great wind into the sea, and there was a mighty tempest in the sea, so that the ship was like to be broken. And within verse 4, what's in common is the word sea, yam. Because whereas, actually, it's not in common, but there is a difference. And verse 4 in chapter 3 says, And Jonah began to enter into the city a day's journey. Sea is yam, whereas day is yom, with the vav in the middle. And journey, and he cried and said, Yet 40 days, and Nineveh shall be overthrown. What's in common with the number 40? I mean, this is more like a theory, which I've highlighted, but I don't know if you find more things related to this in throughout the Bible, because 40, the numerical value of 40 is actually represented by the letter Mayim, which also means sea or waters. And And it's also found in verse 4. This is something that might relate to the 40 days of Jesus in the wilderness mentioned in both Matthew chapter 4 and Luke chapter 4. And probably even the book of Numbers, which is the fourth book, and uh, Israel was said to have gone for 40 days to spy to the land of Canaan, and then they returned with a bad report. Therefore, God punished them, saying that they've tempted me 10 times in the wilderness. Then they're gonna die in the wilderness, not entering the promised land for 40 years, each day for a year. And this is I'm just looking at it, the third column, and I realized I had written the same thing. It says compare day C and the number 40 between Jonah 1 and Jonah 3. First of all, the number 40 appears in verse 4 related to the fourth book of Numbers and Matthew and Luke 4. Also, the letter Maim has a gematria numerical value of 40. The letter also means from the sea. Also, the word for day is yom, which is a vav inserted in between the letters yam, sea. And then afterwards, there's not much in common. I haven't found anything. But it says, then the mariners were afraid and cried every man unto his God and cast forth the wares that were in the ship into the sea to lighten it of them. But Jonah was gone down into the sides of the ship, and he lay and was fast asleep. And chapter 3 verse 5, so the people of Nineveh believed God and proclaimed a fast and put on sackcloth, from the greatest of them even to the least of them. When you look at chapter 1 verse 5, they're casting forth the wares that were in the ship into the sea. This might have a figurative meaning. If you have any burdens that are holding you, like go unto the Lord and repent, and that He would carry your burdens, your burdens will be lightened up. And on the other hand, when you look at chapter 3 verse 5, it does mention that so the people of the Lord, well, they believed God and proclaimed a fast and put on sackcloth, and they're humbling themselves. Now, I don't know if there's a similar wording in the Hebrew. I didn't check in detail, but that's what I have so far. And then verse 6, chapter 1 verse 6, so the shipmaster came to him and said unto him, what meanest thou, O sleeper? Arise, call upon thy God, if so be that God will think upon us that we perish not. And chapter 3 verse 6, for word came unto the king of Nineveh, and he rose from his throne, and he said, he laid his robe from him and covered him with sackcloth and sat in ashes. And